I'm going to hit record, and we are recording. And let's see, today is Tuesday, July 21st. This is the Forget Computers live stream, and today we have a special guest. We have Brian from Ignite, Brian Harmon, and Brian is the principal solutions architect for a platform called Ignite.com. And that is egnyte.com. We'll put the link in the write up. But the reason we're hosting this is we've been using Ignite with a few clients for at least, I think we're going on a year now. And we went, we've been moving people from on-premise servers to the cloud for the last several years, for the past many years. I can't remember exactly when we started. But the biggest challenge is really our creative professional clients who have a lot of data. The most recent client we moved had upward of 60 terabytes of data. And that's a lot of data to just put into the cloud and assume that's going to work just as easily as it did when it was on-prem and or on-site. And so we know the very popular solutions. There's Google Drive, there's OneDrive for Microsoft, there's Dropbox, there's Box, which we also like. But we needed something that was more friendly to our creative professional clients. And when we went searching for that, we found Ignite. And at the time, Brian, I don't know if you know this because I don't know if you were involved in that project at the beginning, but one of the reasons we liked Ignite was the hybrid solution that you offered, where we could have both a cloud and on-prem, and we could kind of make that transition even more smooth by having the best of both worlds. But when COVID struck and we were all forced to go home, we stopped using that on-prem completely. And it was a huge benefit to have everything in the cloud. So, we're all working in this new environment now where we're working from home, we're working remotely, we're working dispersed. And yes, we hope to eventually get back to the office, but I brought Brian in because I'm sure going to do a much better demo than I can do of how this system really works, and just kind of give everyone an overview of why getting your files out of your office and in the cloud is so beneficial. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian. I know that was a long, wordy intro, Brian. Thanks for your patience. And once we start the screen sharing, we can turn off our video and just focus on that.
Yeah. Thanks for the intro, Ben. When companies often look to solve problems for their marketing teams or their creative teams, as well as in our sector, we see a lot of architects and engineering, right? Like they all have the same problem: big files. Big files plus cloud usually is a very scary concept for most. We absolutely fit those two target markets well, mainly because of what you said with the ability to edge cache or give performance in an office or on a laptop as needed, right? In the traditional way of computing, it was, I have 5 offices, I got to have the same data in all 5 offices. And if you're talking 20 terabytes, 100 terabytes, whatever the number is, that's all of a sudden that starts getting very costly and confusing, especially if those servers and offices are not talking to each other or not talking to each other very well, right? Technology breaks down sometimes, and that's very difficult to do your job if you're reliant on things that are not stable or not performant. So when we built the product about 12, 13 years ago, we came out around the same time as some of the names you mentioned, Box, Dropbox. They really went after the consumer market. Hey, everybody gets a free account. You get I think a couple hundred gig at that time. Do it, put your photos, put your whatever documents you want. You can kind of keep them. But even though it was cloud, it was really your laptop or your desktop is the forefront of that information. When we came out, we had a similar concept, obviously, that cloud was very important. You can imagine 10, 12 years ago, selling people on the cloud was extremely difficult. Put everything you have in this unknown thing, and all of a sudden people just, we're not ready for it, right? But what they were ready for was an enterprise piece of software built around collaboration. And it just so happened that the collaboration centralized on files and being able to share them, work on them, access them, all the day-to-day types of functionality. And And even now, right, people in this work from home COVID situation, their biggest complaint is not that I can't get to my files. It's that I have to get to a VPN and I have to do 3 or 4 different things. And if any of that breaks down, I'm now starting over or I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And we hear a ton of those conversations that when people in the IT side of a company picked a VPN solution, they didn't pick it for the whole company to work from home. They
Right.
picked it for some of the employees to work from home. And so the scale and ramifications of that are very apparent these days. And for us at Ignite, luckily, this is how and why we designed our software, right? For an enterprise, but very cloud oriented, link based sharing, the hybrid, as you mentioned earlier, being able to bring things into an office whenever we go back to the office mode, or even to my laptop and desktop, but take advantage of file locking and version control and all the cloud types of technology that support your efforts. The only other note I'll have before I kind of share my screen here in a moment is the marketing and advertising space is huge for us. We've got a majority of kind of the top 10 big ones out there. We have several customers with a couple of petabytes of data with us, well over the terabyte mark. And the reason they do that is because they want to have all of their assets and all of their information in one centralized place and kind of use it in different departments, because every department handles things different. Finances need versus creative team, they're drastically different. And have one place for all of this. And that's kind of a key differentiator between us and other systems out there, is that because we were built for the enterprise, the notion of folders and organization and structure, all inherent to us. But then being able to handle the large files as well as small files and really take the onus out of the end user's hands. Most end users are really not technology folks, right? They just need to do their job. They're accustomed to how they do their job. And if you throw a wrench in that, it can break loose pretty quick. So what I'll show you today is really concentrating on that. And obviously around a creative side or a marketing team or a marketing company, what we do to help those scenarios. It's obviously not going to cover every single base, but it'll cover quite a bit for you. And if there are folks on here through the team that have questions for me, happy to answer them in real time.
Yeah, I mean, one of our issues with trying to find a cloud solution was, as you pointed out, a lot of them started out focused on the individual rather than the team. And even when they took it to the team level, they really only took into account what I would call the Office 365 worker, the standard Office worker who lives in Word, PowerPoint, Excel, that platform. And they didn't allow for the Adobe Creative Cloud or those, really large, rich applications that generate a lot of files, a lot of big files. So that's why we really liked Ignite, is you did speak to that audience who used those files, and it's been a great solution for us. So we want to get more of our clients on this platform, because we've really reached a dead end here with especially with Mac OS X server. I mean, Apple has not really developed or touched that in a while, and we don't see investing in a whole nother server infrastructure, whether it's a Windows server, a new Mac server, or even a local attached storage or network attached storage. Like any type of investment in an on-premise today just feels so limiting and short-sighted. Like, if we're going to invest in anything, let's go with something that's going to serve us well, for the next 10 years, not what served us well maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah. No, AFP was great. Hence was, right? Like, a lot of things have changed in 10, 15 years. And Apple's usually a forefront, right? And they've moved to the cloud, obviously, in the past couple dozen releases. It's the way, right? Like, it's not going to go backwards. But being able to still offer the hybrid side of things, to say in an office you can have extra horsepower if you need it. May not be for the whole company and for all data, but you can really concentrate and take the best of the on-prem world and the cloud world and make them work for you. So.
Yeah. Okay, great. So tell me if, I think I need to maybe give you the ability to share your screen. Let's see, assign moderator. There you go.
All right. And to start things off, what I'm going to do is really kind of jump into a couple of things here. If I can clean up some tabs. There we go. I just have one or two slides to kind of back up what we were talking about before. Not heavy by any means, but just to level set for folks. This is what we see when we come into companies, whether they're small or very large, again, have a couple of terabytes or a couple petabytes. There's all these types of complexity. There's often legacy hardware or infrastructure that they just don't want anymore, but they don't know how to get rid of it. And then in the middle column, some sort of cloud tech is always apparent. Sometimes this is deemed okay by the IT side of the house. Other times it's not, because people can't do their job with the traditional way of doing compute, with regular on-premise servers and VPN and FTP, like all these different things. They often will go and, if you've ever heard the term shadow IT or rogue IT, they'll go use their personal accounts. And that's scary, right? Because this third column is all around making sure that company data stays company data and doesn't leak, doesn't get out. This landscape is constantly in flux, and it's in flux with every different customer. They fall heavily in one of these three columns, not obviously in most companies nowadays, are in all three columns to some extent, especially with data privacy acts and laws and things like that. So the way we approach it as from an architecture standpoint is to say the more you can store in Ignite, the better off your internal and external collaboration will be, not only for replacing file servers, but also for sending proof copies of information to customers or clients and prospects, that internal external mentality, but also obviously being able to protect it as you see fit. So again, I don't want to get too heavy into slideware here. This is a big reason why people come to us, because we're not really built around that notion of consumer first, where I have an account, you guys each have an account. Sure enough, we can collaborate very easily there, but we all own our little part of it. And that's kind of the opposite of a corporate infrastructure where IT owns it, the company owns it, and we just have access to it. So you can see kind of the difference between our hub and spoke model on the right, and then just a collaborative model on the left. Absolutely collaborative. Very difficult sometimes to control and own if people take their ball and go home. So
right, we have so many clients today that have data. Even with an on-premise server, they're doing the shadow IT thing. They've had employees spin up accounts, everywhere, and so they literally have, on the left, they have that view of the world with several different cloud storage providers, and they may not even know that until they investigate pulling all that together into a single location.
Yeah, and unfortunately, tying it a little bit back to the security side of things, this is how breaches make frontline news, right? Certain things about 4 years ago happened, and everybody knew about it, right? Like, just data leakage is a problem, and it's not going to get any better unless people start to take advantage of different technologies to secure it. Two-factor authentication, making sure that you're jumping through the IT hoops as deemed by the company instead of your own personal ones, and using the same password 400 times for your private accounts. So it's a moving target, absolutely. And within Ignite, we're forcing parameters. You can see here on my screen that I have an organization that's, this demo environment is built as a company, and I've got all different types of departments within my company. We're going to concentrate mostly on the marketing side of things here, but this is laid out like a folder tree in any organization that has Windows servers or Mac servers. You need that organization to say who should have access to what departments, what teams, etc. Again, spending the time in this webinar, we probably won't dive deep into users and groups and things that are happening behind the scenes. Mostly concentrate on the user experience. And I'm going to kind of really use two different tools here. This is our web UI. For most folks, this looks very common or very similar to what you would see inside of Mac OS inside of Finder or inside of Windows Explorer if you're on the Windows side of things. Folder structure, and then obviously within folders, you're going to have files and other structure out there for whatever that target is. And in this case, a fake project I have. And that's very common. People are used to this. And if I pull up Finder real quick here, you'll see that same information or the same folder tree is laid out over here. So if I prefer to use this drive letter experience and drill into my data here, absolutely, right? Whatever I'm comfortable with. But behind the scenes, this is all the exact same data. We're not synchronizing it. We don't have extra moving parts in this place. And if we do introduce those, like the hybrid way of computing before that you talked about, I'm in an office and I need to have these files served up as fast as possible. When that gets introduced, the end user doesn't see or do anything different. Still drill into the exact same data. It's just aware to say, you're in an office and you have a hybrid appliance in that office. I'm going to route you through it because it's much quicker than going to the cloud to get to that content. So keeping IT happy, right? Making sure that they're able to keep their end users happy is a big key of this. But taking the technology out of the end user's hands and not making them do something that is foreign to them, absolutely a win as well. So you kind of get the best of both worlds here.
Yeah, I think that was something that was very appealing to many of our clients who we've moved to Ignite, is the familiarity of it being very similar to how they already work. It's just in a different location. So it kind of feels like we just swapped out their old server for their new server at first glance. They don't have to change much of anything in how they work. Yeah, absolutely. We have customers that will start work on Monday and not even realize that they're on a different platform. That's huge, right? Cutting down help desk calls and confusion is a big part of a rollout from the IT perspective. The other thing I'll point out here is you probably see a couple of green dots out here. If you might have to squint a little bit on these screens, but these are not the tags, the green dots and other dots that you have within the Apple tagging. What this is I have selected this project and not necessarily other projects. I've selected this to be synchronized to my laptop. And that way, if I have spotty internet at my home office or just no internet for periods of time because maybe I'm traveling, things of that nature, you can cache content down. So again, the consumer world really wants you to say, whatever's on my laptop, synchronized to the cloud. So it's almost like a backup. We took the opposite approach. Everything lives in the cloud. And if you need it local or you need it on one of those hybrid appliances we talked about earlier, you can absolutely do that. But it's not a requirement. That way, you don't have to buy a bunch of laptops with a couple of terabyte drives in them and spend money on the infrastructure there. You spend it on the location where everything is stored and maintained. And if people need content, they can pull it down. Maybe I wanted to bring one of these other projects in this grip project. I can go and say, let me synchronize just this one. I don't need all of the active projects. I just need specific ones. And at this point in time, it's synchronizing or caching that content from the cloud down to my local workstation. And that way, regardless of internet, I can work on any of these files with or without internet. And that's pretty powerful because you don't need to keep this here forever. Maybe I'm working on this grip project for like the next week or 2 weeks because I need to get through and provide proof copies and do things for this particular customer. I don't want that to live on my laptop forever. If I remember later on where I need to go in and kind of turn things off and desynchronize and stuff like that, I can absolutely do that. But I may not even remember where I pinned everything down. I can go into my offline folder area within our desktop app, which is giving me this mount point here. And I can say, I no longer need both of these or one of these. And we're actually giving you how much space it's actually taking up on the hard drive of that laptop. So you can determine, I need to free up some space. I'm going to get rid of this grip project because I don't need it. But the Logan project, I'm going to continue working on. And I do need that cached all the time and every time for speed and performance. But because I have internet connectivity,
it's automatically going to synchronize changes up to the cloud without even me doing anything. Again, back to that core concept of having end users do their daily job, but not have to learn something new in order to support their work from home, work from office, travel, any of the different scenarios they might find themselves in. Any other thoughts on that, Ben, before we jump into some examples here?
No, I think this is a really powerful feature and concept because, as you've mentioned, some of the other solutions out there are prone to filling up the hard drive with automatic syncing across way too many folders. And as you said, this is the opposite, where you kind of get what you need, select what you need. I do recall one of the features that I'd like you to point out is just the ability to search. So even though you're not pulling all this data down, you can still go into the app and search across all of the data, both in the web and in the desktop app. And I found that to be very valuable.
Yeah, and it's extremely performant, and a couple other things to tie that notion of searching for things and searching for the right things ultimately. It's all permissions based as well. Point of clarity here. I am logged into this environment as an administrator, so I see everything, all departments. But the average person is only going to see the folders that they have access to, and within those folders, they're going to have varying degrees of permissions. To say, in this case, Joe, who needs to do day-to-day stuff, he has the ability to edit and delete and upload new files, etc. But he doesn't have ownership of it. That's not really his job. In my example on the screen here, that's IT ownership. But this could easily be delegated to team leads, managers, department heads. So thinking holistically across the whole company, it doesn't always have to be IT that manages things. They can divvy it out if they feel comfortable in doing so. And then, of course, you can see I have other roles. If I don't want them to delete things, I can restrict that. If I only want them to really be a viewer in this, I can do that as well. And this is on a per folder basis. So on a parent level folder, I may have more or less availability or permissions to it than I do on a subfolder. And that way you can leave things laid out like you like them, right? It makes sense and it's logical to see things laid out this way, and then the projects and active projects and archive projects. And I have this very specific structure for my company that works and makes sense. I don't want to have to break that and reorganize it just to fit a product. And that was a big goal of ours when we built the product, was we need to look like a file server and have the flexibility of the file server, but in the cloud, and make sure that, again, from an end user standpoint, they're really not doing anything different than they've always done, but there's a lot of bells and whistles behind it.
Yes, I know in our migrations, that's one of the things we've kept the same, is the folder structure. Even if there are plans to make some changes, we decided for simplicity, let's migrate sort of as is, and then make those changes down the road when we do have more options for sharing internally, for sharing externally with clients or partners, vendors. And that seems to help people with the migration, getting over the sort of trepidation of moving to the cloud.
Yeah. If you're giving them the equivalent starting point, that's huge. If you have to reorganize it before you can even take advantage of it, that slows things down immensely.
Yeah, it's an additional challenge.
And even after the fact, right? Like, as you mentioned, being able to modify and manipulate and reorganize, all of those they come up in conversation quite often because of, I won't get too nerdy here, but because of the way we built our system and our platform, it's what they call an object-based file system instead of the traditional file system. So think of, if you had a folder and inside of that folder, you had a couple hundred gigs of videos and images and InDesign files and everything that you're working on, for you to move it to another location, it's going to take a while, right? You drag and drop or copy paste, whatever way, it takes a long time to do that. We'll pretend, and this is not the case, obviously, but this Logan project, pretend that it's a terabyte of data just by itself. If I want to archive it, I can literally drag and drop it in my web UI And even if it was a terabyte, it may take 5 seconds longer to do that exercise. But it's just repointing it to a new location, which it's not actually moving it across spindles and hardware. That's a big time saver. So if it comes time to reorganize it later, all of this is very helpful. And of course, you can do it in Finder as well. Same experience, or same back end experience, but the front end is what you're comfortable with. The other thing I'll bring up, I don't bring it up all that often, is we track everything, right? Sometimes that scares people, very big brother every once in a while. But remember, this is an IT-owned product. So making sure there's full insight and audit trails and visibility and everything that needs to be part of that world, we track all that. So in here, you can see moves and edits and all sorts of activities that have happened within this folder. If I go back up like a parent level, it's collective of all of these folders, and it's permissions based. So if you don't have access to some of these sub projects, like an archive project folder, you wouldn't even know this happened. It's all driven under permissions, as is searching, which we're going to get into in a few seconds here. But it's all intertwined because Ignite as a platform obviously has a lot of features and functions, making sure that you only have privy to things that you need to have access to. That's a big part of this model. And that obviously covers into not just seeing the folders, but the files within the folders, searching for files. It's all intertwined, and it doesn't matter what you're using, whether it's the drive, the mount point inside of Finder, the web UI like we have on the screen, mobile device, any of those things. It's the exact same permissions across the board. And from an IT standpoint, they just do it in one place, and it takes effect into all those locations. So again, management of this is also been simplified to make sure that people are not spending extra time running a product like this versus managing Mac OS servers. It's the opposite. Usually we free up additional time for them to do the umpteen other jobs that they have every single day.
Right. And I suppose that's another reason why we like the Ignite platform. I will add that the activity bar on the right is very helpful. I can't count how many times over the years we've had people with a traditional on-premise server lose a file or folder or wonder where it went, or if it got accidentally renamed or deleted or whatever. And there's really no way oftentimes to figure out what happened historically with that data. I mean, if we have a backup, we can restore it, but sometimes mistakes like that aren't uncovered until months after the fact, and it's just too late. So
yeah, and that activity stream keeps like the last, depending on how much activity there is there, it could be the last 5 days, 30 days. If you have a ton of activity, obviously we can't keep everything in this little sidebar forever. But everything that we track, there's full audit reports and visibility for IT to find things. I use this sometimes because I accidentally will drag and drop stuff in Finder, and I have no idea what I did, much less trying to get somebody else to fix it for me. I can come in here and see what I've done, move things back if I accidentally did it. If I deleted it, I can quickly get to the IT team to fix the delete that I did, because one of the things that's built into our product is a centralized trash platform. But that's owned by IT. Most end users don't have access to trash. It's a safety net to say, if I accidentally deleted it, I can't purge it. Like if I go and click on my trash bin and right click and say purge, the Ignite data doesn't go here at all. It goes into the platform. This is universal. So if I, as an admin, I need to find things that so-and-so deleted or when they deleted it, I may have tons and tons of data in trash. This allows me to have its own search system just within the trash contents to recover things as necessary. Yep.
Yeah, that's great. We've used that feature to recover files.
Yeah, no, it's very handy. Having another layer of making sure that things accidentally or on purpose don't happen. It's kind of the lifeblood of IT, right? So let's jump into a couple of things. I'm going to actually switch back to Finder for a second. I got a number of projects. I'm going to use this Logan file. You probably noticed that I have some Illustrator files out here. One of the big things that people ask of us is, how do you interact with the Adobe suite? how are you different from Creative Cloud? We use that quite a bit, and we like it because it's cloud oriented, but is there a way to do those same types of things inside of Ignite? Um, you know, Outside of double clicking on a file, which we can absolutely do, you have not only the extensibility, and I'm actually going to just click on one of them. You have the same extensibility you have within other products. So I have all the Mac actions that I can do out here. But notice there's a couple with our logo on them here. I can share links to this information. So if I need to share this outside of the walls of the company, instead of sending an attachment, which may not even work because that attachment may be huge, we can do the WeTransfer type thing here, where it's built into the product. So you don't need to move this data to another location and then do the share option. I can share it right from here. I'll show you some enhancements on it, because obviously right-click, we can't have you do everything under the sun. We're going to give you specifics. And this is context sensitive. So within an AI file, I don't have a ton of things that I can do. But let's see, if we go and find like a PDF, if I right-click on this PDF, I'm going to have a lot of other options because I have some different integrations within Ignite that allow me to take that PDF and watermark it, split it, edit it, do other types of things within other applications. I can send it off to DocuSign. I can put it in Slack, because oftentimes we become part of an ecosystem that says, I have all these other tools that the whole company uses. Let's make it even more powerful and say, let's do some additional enhancements that you can't do with a traditional file server. And obviously, cloud is very well oriented for that, but a lot of companies or other products make you go into the web UI to do a lot of this functionality, where we're allowing you to initiate it straight from Finder.
Yeah, this is a huge feature that everyone needs to take advantage of once they get moved over to Ignite. And I know we're still educating some of our clients on some of these more advanced features because the habit is still there after many, many years of using attachments in email or using something like a WeTransfer, which just takes so many more clicks, is so much more vulnerable to not working, especially with email attachments, and just having the ability to grab a link and send that out through whatever channel you communicate with your clients is really big.
Yeah. I mean, and if I do this kind of in real time to say, hey, you know what, I need to share a file with Ben in that project. Maybe I'm going to share the actual AI file with you. Most of the times people will run off a PDF or an SVG or something like that to share or show where they are in a specific state. But we'll use this AI file. So if I want to share this with you, I'm not moving it. I'm not copying it or anything. I just say, let me share a link to it. And then I need to determine who I share it with. Is it very generic? Is it very restrictive? Got a lot of options here I can pick from, obviously. Do I want to allow them to download? Yes or no? This is really dependent on the type of file. If we have a way to render a preview only, we can do that. In some cases, we don't have a previewer. They're not going to allow you to have a preview only copy without a download because you may not see anything on the screen.
Right.
My demo environment is also forcing link expiration to say by default, 2 weeks out is kind of the norm, but you can go out to 2 months if you need to. So you'll see here, September 21st is the last date and time, because think of this from a security standpoint. We don't want all data to live forever. And if you have if you send a couple hundred links a year out to a couple hundred people, that's just imposing risk in your world. So don't let it live forever. And again, because it's an IT-owned product, then that can be enhanced and forced down the path as well. Same thing if I wanted to do not necessarily time-based, but once somebody clicks on it, in this case, anywhere from 1 to 5 times, then it'll automatically expire itself. Not time controlled, but based on how many clicks. Mission Impossible style. You can get notification if you want to find out when that person clicked on the link. Instead of babysitting it, I can just have the system automatically email me or send me a push notification that somebody clicked on the link I sent them. We purposely obfuscate this information, but if you want to have the link be a little more friendly, you can do that. We obfuscate it on purpose because it's a far more secure way of doing this. And then because we have version control built into the product, you can have it tie to the latest and greatest all the time. So if you are doing draft work or proof work for somebody, don't keep sending them a new link every single time you've done things. Just say, hey, whenever you want to see the latest, click on this link and you will see the latest. Yeah, we don't need to keep sending you links because that's just confusing.
Oh, that's nice. I did not know that.
Yeah. It's if you need it to tie to a specific one, it's simply uncheck it. And whatever one is the one you're doing at this time, that's what it'll bind itself to. Click a link, copy it, or as you saw on the previous screen, I could also email it. And then they're going to have a branded experience when they click on it on their side. We tie into Microsoft applications, Gmail. So depending on what the client's using on their side, you can initiate those links straight from your email as you're drafting it up as well. You don't have to come to the web UI and copy paste and things like that. You can eliminate, again, steps required across all the corporate tools that you're using. And since I mentioned version control, I'll just pull this up for a second. In this embedded AI that I have up here, there's 4 different versions. Sometimes you may have 40, sometimes you may have 400. It's really dependent on how the company says, how many the company wants to keep, right? This is a global number. Obviously, keeping 1,000 of every single file, probably not necessary, but a dozen, 2 dozen, less than 50 is usually the number we see. So that way you have ample time to recover back from old copies if you need to, delete things, download a copy and save it elsewhere. These are all available if you have permissions to it, tying it back to our previous conversation. I can also go and look and see who accessed it, right? In this case, I haven't shared it yet, but it'll tell me the last download. So if you have a link shared to something, you can come back and always see that material. Something else that comes up quite a bit is what I call the Coke and Pepsi syndrome. Let's just say this was for Coke, and I shared that link, or I created that link, and I shared it off, and just realized I shared it to the wrong people. I shared it to the people at Pepsi. I want to quickly go in and fix that. If I've done that via email, you're kind of stuck, right? If you email an attachment to someone and it's not the right person, you got to grovel a little bit. You can try to hit the recall button. It oftentimes just really doesn't do what you expect it to do. But in here, I can quickly see that I sent this 2 minutes ago. Nobody's viewed it yet. I want to go kill it. And that way, now this has been deleted. If somebody were to go in and now receive that email, say, hey, let me click on that link that Brian just sent here. When they get in, they're going to get a dead link. Won't show them anything. So tying this all back to governance and security, if you accidentally do the wrong thing, you can quickly go and recover that yourself. I don't have to go to IT and say, hey, quick, try to kill that email. The email can go through perfectly fine. I can control my own links that I've generated and restrict them, open them back up. If I have a link that's been expired down here, I can go and say, hey, you just tried to click on it. This one was based on clicks. I can't recover that, but let me generate a new link for you. Or if it's time-based and it's been expired that way, sometimes you can go through and you can actually turn that back on and say, now you got another 2 weeks that this will live, but you have to manually force these because the company is going to set them to expire based on the rules they have within the company. Same thing, like I talked about earlier, we have all these different endpoints, Finder and web and mobile device, et cetera. You might even have 2 or 3 different computers with all those different things. This collects all of your links that you've created across all those endpoints. You don't have to go hunt them down. Like, where did I do that one link? This is doing all that for you.
Yeah, we had a client on another platform that had an issue with links. And so we had to dig deep and see what links were out there, and discovered that there were thousands of links for many years that had been generated that were still floating out there. So having the links expire or the ability to terminate them is really nice.
Yeah. And even if let's just go back to that Coke and Pepsi analogy here. Maybe I don't want anybody sharing any links outside of the organization for this project. As an IT person, I can go and set restrictions on this. I can say, I want links. I want links for internal folks to share back and forth because some of these are huge files and I don't want them attaching back and forth. That's crazy. So I can go and say, for this particular folder, I don't want public links. I want the other links, and that's it. Even as an admin, if I go now and try to share a link with one of these files, when I go to the options, I don't even have anyone with a password, because I'm keeping this in-house. If I choose one of these options and send it to someone, even though that person may be outside of the company, when they click on it, the first thing it says is, okay, log in with your credentials. And if you don't have a login, guess what? You can't get to that content. So even if you accidentally, or an employee accidentally sends something out that they shouldn't, you're still protected as a company with your IP. So very good things. And I know we keep bouncing back and forth between the end user experience and the IT experience, but I even tell people, you may not be in IT as an end user in the marketing team and things like that, but it's always good to know what they're thinking, right? Because if you can get ahead of their thinking, then you're not going to get in trouble. You're not going to get yelled at. You're going to be able to do your job even more effectively. And vice versa. IT is always good. They can't understand what every employee does at a company, but at least understanding per team or per group how they interact and how they're different from other teams and groups. That's very important, because they can tailor the product to meet the demands of every team and treat the one product differently for different use cases. That's huge. So the last little bit I really had here was around using Illustrator. I'm going to pull that up in just a second, because a lot of times people will ask, right, with the Adobe suite, like I said earlier, what if I want to go in and work with this AI file, or InDesign or Photoshop or whatever they may be using? How do things work outside of just the traditional putting images, building my creation, doing my work? How does it work with links? How does it work with contextual information and references and things like that I'm accustomed to doing? Because I don't have just a single file that I do everything in. We're absolutely linking back and forth. And usually the concern is, will a platform like Ignite that's doing this in the cloud be able to handle updates and keeping it all in sync, and the master file being kept as the master file versus an embedded piece of information? So as you can see here, this master file's got a couple of different things linked into it. I'm going to go open one of those as well, like this image. And I'm going to do some basic things like, we'll overlap this, we'll change the fill. Everybody who's in creative is cringing right now, or red and purple together is a no-no. And then, simply save it. Remember, I opened this up from a drive letter experience, but it's the cloud behind the scenes. So you can see here, if I let it sit for a few seconds, we have the little exclamation point saying that one of these components is changed. If I let it sit even longer, there it is. The pop-up is going to come and say, hey, do you want to synchronize and refresh your information now, so that now my master copy has pulled in those changes from a linked file? You don't really have to do anything. As long as you have Finder and you have the volume information that you saw out here, that's it, right? Like, obviously, if you don't have internet, this might be a little problematic, but that's where caching it down to your local machine can help out. And in most cases, if you don't have internet and you're trying to collaborate and do things across other team members, across their home offices and different offices, et cetera, that's going to be problematic by itself. We're not going to circumvent the lack of internet in some cases, but even if you don't have internet, you're not stuck. And notice that whole time, I didn't have to download. I didn't have to go and re-upload, do my edits and then re-upload that information. I just worked with it. Not a big deal. If I go back over here now and refresh my screen, you'll see that the version numbers climbed on a few of these files that Brian made this edit today, and that's the latest and greatest copy. Again, as an end user, I don't have to go and do anything. It's just all happening behind the scenes with the version control and the other cloud type technology to make this kind of back it up in real time with version control. So that way, if I needed to go back to an old copy, I can. Maybe I don't need to go back to an old copy with the master file. I just need to go back to an old copy where the colors were different on this one. I can go and do all those day-to-day functionality that most people expect to be part of their world. And again, these are not very big files, obviously, but if you had larger files in the tens of megs or hundreds of megs, or in the case of some 4K video files, tens of gigs. We handle all of it. Obviously, editing a 10 gig video file across the internet, that's going to slow things down.
Yeah.
There's realistic expectations you have to set for yourself. That's where we say, hey, in that folder that you have it in Finder, go and selectively just say, let me cache that by right-clicking and synchronizing. Obviously, that might take a few minutes, probably take a while, depending on your bandwidth in your home office. But now you can work locally, and as you change and make edits inside of, Final Cut or other video editing software, it's pushing those deltas up to the cloud so that everybody will see them from that point forward. And again, you don't have to VPN with any of this. You just log in, you get to your content in your home office, the actual office, at a hotel. Again, really predominant where you have internet. And sometimes that's, my iPhone connected to my MacBook.
Yeah, you guys have an iPhone app, right? I think an
We do.
iPad and an iPhone app.
Yeah, they're actually really nice. They're very easy to use, and the nice thing is you can do comments. I would not say you want to really open up a bunch of files and edit them on your iPad. You can do it in a pinch, but the number one thing is I'll be out walking with my family, and somebody says, "Hey, can you send me a link to that file you did earlier?" Yeah, I can pull my phone out of my pocket, a few clicks, send link right from there. I don't have to forget when I get back to the office, and then they yell at me later.
And you can certainly review files on the iPhone or iPad. I think you can even comment on them if somebody wants to get your opinion on a document.
Absolutely, you can. And that kind of goes with that tool in hand mentality, right? Like it changes based on people and their jobs and their day-to-day functionality. We have a lot of customers in the construction space that they're out on job sites, right? They can't pull out their laptop and just start doing things. They're doing it on iPads. They're doing it in their phone, and quickly making a comment to say, somebody else should review this. Like, I'm going to have Brian review it. Whoops, pick the right Brian here. I can do this, hit submit, and I could do that on my phone or my iPad, like you said earlier, Ben. And now this is tied to the file, right? So if this file moves or more people get added to the project, they see that historical set of information. It's not hey, let me forward you a bunch of emails and things like that. Obviously, we're built to be collaborative, and this is a big part of it. Same thing with tasks. If I want to actually assign Brian a task and say it's due on this date, I can do that as well. It really depends on how formal I want to get with that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have noticed earlier when I bypassed that warning sign, I picked somebody's name before that didn't have access to this. And when I did that, it says, hey, you're trying to comment somebody that won't even be able to see this comment. Does that make sense? Do you need to add them to this, or did you pick the wrong Brian in that case? So back to that permissions model, we want to make sure we're not accidentally giving someone insight into something that they wouldn't readily have access to. So.
Yeah, going back to something you said about how Illustrator, for example, just works with the embedded files, much like people expect it to. I think I can't overstate the fact that one of the things we really like about Ignite is the ability to make that transition from a traditional old school on-prem server to the cloud. Everyone feels at home. Nobody has to change their workflow. Now we can focus on teaching, educating everyone on all the new features and abilities that they have. Because that's really where the time needs to be spent anyway. Like, we don't want to have to change workflows and redo everything. We just kind of want to keep things the same, but layer on even more features. And some of these are going to be naturally discovered as you just use the platform. Some of them will take some education or some reiteration. Like the next time someone in your team sends you an email with an attachment, you say, "Hey, what are you doing? Here's the link. Let's collaborate this way."
Yeah, absolutely. The last little bit I have, because I think we got about 10 minutes left here, was really around metadata. Everybody, some people don't use metadata at all. Some people do heavily. If you're using like Adobe Bridge and things like that, you're obviously accustomed to doing different metadata. In our world, we have the notion of metadata to keep with these files. Different teams, different departments, they all may have different structures. And you can see in here, I got some stuff for HR around resource information that they keep track of. I've got stuff tied into an email system to kind of share information between multiple platforms. And in my case here, I also have something that talks about tagging. And in this one, it's actually talking about auto tagging, because we have some integrations with AI and machine learning frameworks where I can literally take a picture with my cell phone out in the field and send it, have it automatically upload through the Ignite app and go through an AI analysis. And it can break apart that image and find out various components it finds in there. Very cool, right? Not always useful for everyone, but a lot of people are like, how in the world would you use machine learning and AI with files? That doesn't make sense. Auto tagging stock footage or new stock footage is a big one, right? In my case, I can manually type these tags in if I wanted to pick the date that I've done all this work. But like I said earlier, we absolutely have tied it in. And you can kind of see here in this email that I pulled up, when it went through that process, it said, hey, in this file, I found these particular words. And they may not be 100% applicable. I can click on this link. I can view that file. I can make changes to the metadata, which is infinitely better than saying, hey, here's a new image, look through it and put your own words in there, what you think you would want to tag this with. We're all humans. We don't do everything great. And especially if you're trying to get out the door, you may forget about it. And then tomorrow you have an untagged item, and then somebody else later on spends another $100, $200 on that image and didn't need to because it already existed. They searched for it. They couldn't find anything because there was no metadata associated with it. There's kind of that circular world of how you use metadata. Obviously, storing information is very important. But now I want to go look for things, and I'm not going to look for an AI file. But if I just wanted to search with things that have the word test in them, type that out. I'm going to see folders with the word test, file names with the word test in the actual contents of the file and descriptions of those files. That all works, right? And that would include tags and things like that if I had the word test in there. I think if I search for the word wine, I think I have an image, right? Like, so this image obviously isn't called wine. It's not in a folder called wine. But if I go and look at that image, you'll see here that it for whatever reason, thought I had a wine glass because I had a red water bottle. And now, right, but because it auto-tagged it, I can search for it. You can... Any comments and tasks, if you type the word wine in there, that gets indexed with everything else and you can find it. So if you're making mental notes, not necessarily things that need to go into metadata, that's all searchable as well. Which when you're trying to find things quickly, that can be very important. And if I go back to my test option here, like I said, I got a couple gigs of data here. It quickly comes back with that. And as you mentioned earlier, Ben, if I wanted to do this inside of the Ignite app, we're not quite tied into Spotlight yet. We're working on that. Little Apple has some very big handcuffs that you can't do certain things yet. But I can come in here and search. So if I search for wine as well, give it a few seconds. Whoops, I got to search the right domain here. Again, almost as performant. Now I can quickly go into it. I can share a link to it. I can go to the folder. I can go to the actual file. I've got a number of actions I can do right from here. And one that was on the screen right before that, that's kind of tied into this, is a recents list. So notice that I've got my embedded UI. I've got some other things out here across multiple domains, Ignite domains, that I can get to that data very quickly based on, again, I don't care if I did that on my cell phone or my tablet or my drive letter or whatever. It's culminating all that together so that I can quickly get to files that I use all the time and speed up that workflow.
Yeah, I think people rely on search more and more, especially as we come to expect search to work much like Google, searches the internet. And when you have a traditional file server, you're very much limited to file names and folders. Folder names. Occasionally, you may have the ability through Spotlight to go a little deeper, but often not. And just having the extra metadata that you can either automate with Ignite or organize, with intention with Ignite is fantastic, including like those comments you pointed out. If you're able to search and you find something that was commented on, I mean, how many times have I seen an organization, you try to search for the final document, and you search for final, and then you come up with final 1, final 2, final. It's like so many iterations of final. If you were to tag something as this is the true, final piece with something like metadata, then that would be even easier to identify later.
Yeah, absolutely. You would actually even change your search flow here to say, hey, I don't really want the word final in the document. I want a tag that says the word final, and you're focusing the search down to very specific information. I don't want something with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across the board. I only want that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 when it's actually in my my construction tags that I have, right? Which are really around the the cost code, right? I don't care about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as characters anywhere else. It has to only show up in the cost code as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not the file name, not the document, not anything else. So that definitely will help speed up that search. And even if I wasn't in this, if I'm just anywhere on my Mac, if I do Command-Shift-Space, we have a hotkey to quickly get you into search. So the equivalent of pulling up Spotlight, but obviously we're focusing it on here.
Yeah, well, one last thing about the cloud and Ignite is that ability to add new features. So, you mentioned that you're working on Spotlight integration, and I know you've had other features over the past year that have come out. And that's just something that you're typically not ever going to get with an on-premise server. I mean, there was a time where maybe we got a few enhancements with an OS update, but that is pretty much ended. Like, nobody is innovating on-premise, at least not in the world that we live in. And so you are landlocked, both in how that data, where it's stored, and how you use it and how you manipulate it. So in order to get to the next level and to grow and continue growing, you've got to have your data in the cloud. And of course, we'd like to see it at Ignite because we think it's a solid solution. So I know we're out of time, and we're going to get this posted to our website and share it with our clients, especially those clients who have on-premise servers. Michelle, do we have any questions or anything we want to add before we sign off?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, Brian, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And I will see everyone else next Tuesday at our next live stream.
Thanks for the time, guys.
Yeah, thank you.